And we have begun. I'm excited to bring the second episode that we have of the Travel Chronicles. We have two very special guests, two people that are near and dear to my heart. First one I met was Nick Christie back in my freshman year of college. Happened to be my resident RA and also happened to be my neighbor across my hall. So he's great. We also had a lot of times on the walls where things were noisy and things like that. We're still trying to figure out where all those bugs in the wall were from.
They were old. It's older buildings. There must have just been mice in the wall, or we never. I think the jury's still out on what was happening there. I hope they got an exterminator, but I don't think they did.
I hope so too. I complained to Cody at the time. I was like, Cody, the walls are out. And me and Nick don't appreciate it. And then he just laughed and walked away, but it's okay.
That sounds like Cody to me.
Yeah, so that's it. And then, of course, Shannon Christie, who is the lovely wife of Nick, who I met multiple times, and she's great, just as great as Nick. So I'm excited to have all of you, both of you, specifically on. And they also have, fun fact, a dog named Leo, who I'm sure eventually will make his way into the podcast or have his voice heard. And I love Leo, so that is for everybody to know. But thank you guys so much for being a part of the Travel Chronicles. We're excited to talk about everywhere you guys have been. So I've introduced you somewhat, but now I'll give you guys the floor. You guys can introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, where you're both from, and what do you both do right now as a profession? How do you guys keep yourself busy, basically?
Sure. So we're both originally from State College, Pennsylvania, where we met. We both went to State College area high school. And then after school, we both graduated, thankfully. I guess Shan was more a shoo-in to graduate than I was, but we don't need to go into grades specifically. I ended up leaving the area. I went to Elizabethtown College where I met Jamie, and Shannon ended up staying at Penn State, but we ended up staying together all 4 years. And then Shannon was silly enough to say yes when I proposed to her. And since then, we have moved to Mechanicsburg. We bought a house in 2020. That was probably the only good thing about 2020 that happened. Currently live together in a beautiful home in Mechanicsburg with our dog. I work for a local home improvement company in their marketing department, and I do a odds and ends there. And then in my free time, I like to coach soccer with a local soccer club here. I coach a young girls team, helping to develop young players and making them better. So it's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Well, you covered a lot of my backstory there too. But I mean, actually, I was born in Texas, but I don't remember anything about it. So sorry, Jamie, I can't really talk about that. Moved to State College when I was like 2, maybe. But then, lived in State College. Now I live in Mechanicsburg, and I'm a mechanical engineer. So I studied engineering at Penn State, and now I'm living life doing that.
Poppin'. I didn't know you were born in Texas. That's news to me. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if my parents told me that I was born in State College, I would have believed them wholeheartedly because I remember nothing about it.
She didn't get to keep the Southern accent or anything like that. So
okay. So do you go to Texas? I'm now curious. Do you go to Texas at all for anything, or is it just like?
No, so my parents moved down there for work, and we don't have any other family down there. And then they moved back to be closer to extended family. So there's no family down there. Eventually I want to go back just to kind of see where I lived for the first 2 years of my life, but we'll get there eventually.
Sometime soon.
Yes, hopefully.
So Pennsylvania's home, whereas Texas is like on the birth certificate.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the technicality.
Awesome. And you guys are great human beings. For everybody who's listening, these two are awesome individuals.
Oh, thank you.
These two are great individuals. So, of course, I had to have them on. And with your travels let's start with you, Shannon, with your travels to E-Town. The difference, of course, to E-Town to Penn State it's a thing. So how would you describe the cultural vibe at E-Town compared to the cultural vibe at Penn State? And to be more specific, I always say that sometimes traveling doesn't just have to be going on a plane and going to a different country. It can be literally going to somewhere that's 30 minutes away or going somewhere that's 30 hours away. So how would you describe that cultural vibe of going to that large Penn State University to a small place like E-Town?
Yeah, I loved going to Penn State. It was so much fun, but it is a huge student body. And, you could walk down the street and not recognize any students that you see, even though there's hundreds that you will see. Whereas in E-Town, it was kind of funny where I'd go walking with Nick, and clearly I wouldn't really know anyone, at least in the beginning. And Nick would know so many people just from one walk from one building to another. And so many, it seemed like he knew everyone. and that might just be your personality. And then especially even at, like towards our senior year, I feel like I knew a lot of people just walking from one building to the other. So it seems like a very close-knit, like everyone's friendly, everyone knows each other, everyone wants to get to know each other. Very sincere group of people there. And it was kind of almost like a small town vibe, and it was really nice. Very different from Penn State, and I love both, but it was nice to be able to get away a little bit, especially on some trips where I'd have a break and Nick wouldn't, but we'd want to spend the time together since we didn't live in the same town. So I'd go and spend maybe a couple days, and you'd still have classes and everything, but so I'd kind of follow you around to your lunch and everything, and everyone just seemed so positive and happy to be there.
Beautiful.
Really nice.
Beautiful. And remind me the distance again, drive-wise, from there to...
It's 2 hours from State College to E-Town, pretty much exactly.
Awesome. So if you're like driving fast, it's like an hour 45.
If you're driving like Nick, it's an hour 45.
Okay, I drive the speed limit-ish. I get where we need to go at the time we need to be there. I pride myself in that.
I did.
There are some people that like, they look at the GPS, they look at Google Maps, and they're like, I'm going to beat that time.
Whatever you say, Google Maps.
If I saw 2 hours to get to Penn State, I'm like, oh, I can get there like maybe an hour and 40, just depending on the speed. But so now I propose the same question to you, Nick. And I'm excited to hear with this one because really, when I think of Penn State, I think of Penn State football, of course. I think of this city-ish vibe area. I think of endless opportunities, endless things to do, endless ways to get involved, and just so much opportunity, the network of Penn State. So, of course, being married to an alum and being from a small vibe place like E-Town, how was that every time you traveled? What was that difference for you like?
Yeah, it was really interesting, especially because that was our hometown. And so Penn State wasn't the only part of State College to where I really spent a lot of my time. My mom still lives in State College. I had siblings that lived there at the time. And so I was able to, go and see Shan on campus and do campus activities. But at the same time, I also had my family there, and also a bunch of friends from high school and middle school that I still knew there as well. So I think that going up for Penn State games was definitely a great experience. And it's something that, we always look forward to, getting to tailgate in the mornings, getting to see a bunch of friends, and then getting to see a great game of football, whether you're going into the stadium or just going back to watch it at somebody's apartment or house. So that's definitely a big part of it. I think a newer piece of Penn State that I really got to experience is when Shan was part of the Whiplash dance team on Penn State. 2 years VP, no big deal. But it was a great group of people, and once again, you really had that feeling of community and inclusion and like understanding and appreciation. And I think that every time I went to a Whiplash event, whether I knew the people or not, everyone was so inviting, so happy to see me. I did get one talking to by Nina, who was one of Shan's bridesmaids at the wedding, and that was a conversation of, if you hurt her, bad things will happen.
Well, that was at the wedding, but also, so I've known Nick way longer than I knew everyone at E-Town, especially at Penn State, my freshman year especially. And so I joined this dance team Whiplash, and they do like big and little and everything. And my big Nina, I had maybe at the time known her for only like a month or so. And Nick came to one of our first events and met everyone, and she gave him a stern talking to, saying, "If you hurt her, I'll hurt you," or something like that. And I thought it was so funny. I thought it was funny because I was like, I've known Nick way longer than I've known you. Now, of course, Nina is one of my dear best friends, and she was a bridesmaid at our wedding. So it's funny to look back at, but everyone loves Nick all the time. But they had to give him one or two talking to make sure that you don't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course we wouldn't.
Of course. And, we had that sense of community in the dance team, but then we also had my group of friends who were still in town. So Shan and I got to kind of enjoy and split time between our family, between Whiplash and being on campus, but also between our friends who were still living in the area. So we got a little bit of that hometown feel. It allowed me to stay connected with all of my friends who still live there, but also I got a little bit more of the Penn State student experience that I never really had. So definitely a great place. And I think it's more than the football. It's more than just being large. Like it really is a community, not only on the campus, but also just in the town. You
kind of have to find your own community within the large community. Mm-hmm. Like I found my dance team and my roommates and some of my classmates that, especially towards the later years in college, you have a lot smaller classes. Like, it's not all the giant classes that you think. I mean, some of it is, especially in the freshman year and sophomore year classes, but you start to recognize a lot of faces pretty quickly, especially your junior year in your classes, and meet a lot of people. So you find your own community there. You kind of have to, otherwise it could probably get lonely, probably like living in any other big city.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's not really, it's funny, it's not really a big city when the students aren't there. So State College is kind of in the summer, it's kind of a small town vibe too. Got you.
And so basically a large community that holds a bunch of little like sub communities, you'd say.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Cool. So, okay. I didn't know you were the VP of like a dance club. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was. It was a great time.
That's amazing. So, and how often, this is probably like a weird question, but how often would you guys like try to see each other, like going to Penn State and then going to E-Town back and forth?
We tried at least once a month if possible. Of course, sometimes that couldn't happen if we had like exams and finals and stuff. But usually, especially like in the fall, there's football games that Nick wanted to come up for. There's like in the spring, you have your at least junior, senior thing that I had to come up for. So like there's some things that like events that we wanted to come to for each other anyway. Like I had my dance stuff, and then there would be like date functions for that as well. And then just holidays we'd always spend together. So it was pretty easy to spend at least once a month a weekend with each other.
And of course, technology made it really great to be able to connect. I mean, we were texting all the time. We had a lot of video calls that we took place in, and we
Skype dates.
We did Skype dates. We did Netflix dates too, to where we would both be watching the same show at the same time and like video calling at the same time. So even if we couldn't like be together, there were plenty of other avenues we got to explore that we could continue to stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. These people are great. I love Nick and Shannon. they're great human beings. So take a lot of tips, people. Take a lot of tips. So of course, love has flourished, and now you guys are great, married, and it led to a beautiful trip to Hawaii, specifically your honeymoon trip, which is what I would absolutely love to talk about today. So let's start with who came up with the idea for Hawaii, and what else was on the table per se for options, places you might have wanted to go, and what ultimately led to wanting to go there.
So I don't even know if we had many other options other than Hawaii. In my opinion, it was kind of like, this is our chance to take the kind of not cheesy honeymoon vacation, but like mine as well. Like, it's your honeymoon. Let's do the honeymoon vacation and let's go. Because before that, I've traveled a little bit for work, but all within like the East Coast or maybe further down south, like in around the Texas area. So like we hadn't really traveled that much, at least in far distances. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I think this is a time, it's an excuse for us to just go for it and do the classic Hawaii honeymoon.
I think we weighed our options too. I mean, there are plenty of other places we'd like to go out of the country. We'd love to go to Europe. I think that there are a lot of like, the United Kingdom, Germany, Spain, Italy, just to name a few from our list. And I think that we kind of came to the conclusion that with travel time and all the things we'd want to do, we want to make that more of an extended piece. And Hawaii seemed like we would have the time that we needed to see what we would like to see and make a plan for something that we'd really enjoy. And I think that the other part of that too was, the wedding itself and planning everything and putting that together. It was an amazing time, but it was also tiring, getting everything together and making sure all the people knew where they were supposed to be, getting groomsmen and bridesmaids where they were supposed to go, more groomsmen rather than bridesmaids, because it's like herding cats. Sorry, fellas. But it's you're putting all this stuff together and you want it to be perfect so that people like Jamie Ramos goes in his podcast and says that was an awesome wedding. Like that was our goal. And so knowing that we wanted to kind of relax after everything was said and done, it seemed like Hawaii was the perfect place.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We definitely want to get to Europe, but that'll be a next big trip.
For sure. And when you go to Spain, you call your boy.
Yes, that is my number one place I want to go, Spain.
You let me know, and I'll give you all the great recommendations. That's awesome. So how long were you guys there in Hawaii specifically?
Just under 2 weeks. So we left on a Sunday, and then we made our way back the following Thursday. So by the time we got back home, it was a Friday.
Yeah, 10-ish days.
So around there.
So let's break it down week by week, specifically the first week. So if I remember correctly, you guys went to two different places, 2 different weeks, correct?
Yes,
or was that
we went to Maui first and then Oahu, specifically in the Waikiki area.
Oh, Sounds exciting. So let's start with the first week. How was it when you guys got there? Did they give you the typical like lay when you landed, like on the
So we literally left the morning after our wedding. So we had a travel agent help us at least with flights and hotels and stuff. And when she first sent options for flights on the way out, because we told her we wanted to leave the day after because we already took time off. Like we just want to keep one long time off from work, to make it easy. And she sent us a flight option that we would have had to be at the airport at like 4 a.m, and not even including driving there. And I was like, I know I said I want to leave the next day, but we're literally getting married the night before, and the reception goes until 10 p.m. We're going to be tired. I don't think we can get up at 3 a.m. to get to an airport. So luckily we got to change it. So we didn't fly out until almost 1 out of Dulles. So it's drive there. So we still had to get up decently early and drive there. And I feel bad. We just left like everything there. And we had to rely on our parents and our family to just clean everything up for us, which I felt bad. But I was like, it was kind of like we did it all and then just pieced out real quick. But so we left and we drove to the airport. And then some of my family is down there and nice enough to let us park there. So we didn't have to pay for parking the whole time, and drove us to the airport. And we got there. So there's a big time difference. We stopped in San Francisco for a short layover and then flew the rest of the way, which was kind of perfect because it split it really right down the middle of the long flight. And it was a nice break. We got to Hawaii in Maui, local time. It was like 8, I want to say. But of course it felt 6 hours later for us. So we were exhausted. And so it was dark out. It was kind of cool flying in because, you're over the ocean. Then all of a sudden you see all these lights appear out of nowhere. And so it was really cool. It was my first time flying like overseas. So it was kind of a cool experience. And we landed and the airport was kind of like a regular airport you would expect. And then, we got down to our luggage and they did the whole lay thing. I think our travel agent put that in there because she scheduled that for us. So not everyone got a lay. So if you want a lay, I think you have to tell someone that you do. But we got one, and that was really fun. They were beautiful, big flowers and everything, and got our bags. And then we didn't rent a car at all in Hawaii, which was great because they can get expensive. And at the time we were 24, so they would be even more expensive because we weren't 25 yet. And so it was really nice to get away with not needing one. So we took a shuttle from the airport to our hotel. So we got to the hotel and we basically just checked in, got the lowdown on where everything was, and then went to bed because we were exhausted. Yep. But I tell you, waking up the next morning and going out on our balcony or island and just seeing all the palm trees and the beach and everything, it was just beautiful. Anything else?
It was incredible. I mean, just like Shan was saying, we were really so tired, and I don't think we got to really appreciate the beauty of where we were staying until the next day. But every day you would wake up and you'd walk by like this beautiful courtyard full of palm trees and sand, and they had this beautiful breakfast every single morning. A lot of like incredible like traditional breakfast food, if you would think of like eggs, bacon, toast, things of that nature. But then they also had some traditional Hawaii food, which was also incredible.
A lot of rice.
And for that first day, we were really just kind of relaxing on the beach, and it was just, you could see one of the neighboring islands off of the beach. They had these beautiful sailboats that would come in and pick people up for excursions. So every once in a while you'd be sitting on the beach and you look up and there's just this huge sailboat that has a lovely, like a giant staircase that would just come down onto the beach, and like 12 people would file their way on. And I guess they were heading to some of the islands. I mean, it was just like every day was just perfect.
It's crazy because I grew up going to Ocean City and things like that. And those beaches in the summer get packed with people. Like you have to go down in the morning to claim your spot. Otherwise you're going to be way in the back. And so I almost just kind of expected the same thing. There was hard. And we went in end of September, early October. So it's still pretty in season for them. And there was hardly anyone on the beach. Plenty of people walking especially, but we had a lot of the beach to ourselves. And it was kind of amazing because I'm like, I know, it's harder to get there, I guess, but I would have thought it would have been packed with people. But it was even that more beautiful that you can just have this beautiful big piece of beach to yourself and see the island, the neighboring islands right in front of you. And the water was surprisingly kind of warmer, which I didn't realize. The Pacific Ocean was a little warmer, but it was wonderful that first day to just kind of relax, get our feet in the sand, and do nothing.
I think that for so long, whenever I've thought of vacations, like even for my favorite places I've ever gone, there's always like one or two things I can point to where it's like, oh, like that could have been better, or I would have preferred it in a different way. With Hawaii and our hotel, like I can't think of anything specifically that I would have changed or suggested to make better, because it was just like, it was just the most relaxing and beautiful place.
Yeah. Especially Maui. Maui will hold a special place in my heart. I loved Oahu as well, but I mean, as you know, Honolulu is more of a city vibe, but Maui was just, if we go back, we obviously want to do some other islands too, but I think I would go back to Maui just to be there again, because it's gorgeous there. It really is.
Awesome. So when you went, so the first week where you were, what was the name of the actual like town and city for the first week again?
And this is a full disclosure. We went to Hawaii. Doesn't mean we can pronounce everything right. We tried to learn while we were there, but some things just don't stick. So I'm going to say what it is.
The disclosure is out there. It's out there.
Disclosure's out there. So sorry if anyone's offended by us saying this, but we stayed on the Kaanapali Beach, and specifically at the Kaanapali Beach Hotel. And that's on the west side of Maui, which is kind of where a lot of more of the hotels and resort areas are.
Whalers Village? Was that
Whalers Village was like a little town, town of shops and stuff, a little bit like a short walk away from us, just south of there. So it's not huge, but Kaanapali Beach is like the main area where we were. And it was awesome. It was kind of fun. So we got a recommendation for this hotel from my parents went to Hawaii on their honeymoon 30 some years ago. I can't remember now. And they met another couple while they were there, and they kind of stayed in touch. And that couple travels a lot and goes to Hawaii a lot. And so they sent some ideas and locations and things for us to look at. And they recommended this hotel, and it was beautiful. It wasn't like a standard big resort hotel room, which we kind of loved. Like, it was a standard hotel room. It kind of had some Hawaiian colors and stuff to it, but nothing like overly glamorous. But the staff was wonderful and so welcoming, and so like you can tell they cared about like teaching you about Maui and like making sure you have a fun time and just being so wonderful. And so we really, really enjoyed that hotel. And then the little courtyard they had was beautiful. So highly recommend Kaanapali Beach Hotel.
Kaanapali Beach. And you mentioned that there wasn't that many people, like it wasn't like packed. You said like it was kind of like a lesser. So where you were, I'm assuming like most parts of Hawaii have like some kind of tourism to it because it's Hawaii. But would you say like where you were was like a popular tourist spot, and you just happened to luckily be there when nobody was there, or was it kind of more of like a hidden gem based off of the recommendation you got?
I think at Maui, a lot of the tourist areas are on the west side of the island. So I have a feeling that we were probably in a pretty touristy area. So Maui has a lot of volcanoes, dormant or not, that kind of take up a lot of the island. So there's really only so many places that you can have a lot of touristy areas. Yeah. Even if you kind of look at Maui, there's one on the left side and one on the right side, and you kind of have to drive when you have to drive to the airport that's right in the middle of the island, you have to drive all the way around one set of volcanoes. So it's not exactly the fastest way to travel, but so I think we were in a very touristy area, but I guess we just lucked out. Now maybe it's because we didn't stay in one of the giant hotels that you kind of think of, that there weren't so many people in our hotel that they all went to the one space. But I don't know, even walking to the little town, like around dinner time, there'd be a lot of people at restaurants and you'd have to wait for a table. So it just kind of seems like everyone was doing their own thing. Not everyone was just sitting on the beach. There was a lot of tours that you can do and other fun things. So I think just everyone kind of dispersed throughout the day. Didn't necessarily just sit at the beach. So that was nice.
Perfect. But what matters is you guys had it to yourself the time you were
Yes, it was our beach.
which is all that matters at the end of the day. Exactly. So you had it all to yourself. So what traditional dish did you get to try? Any like cool traditional dishes while you were there in the first week or the second week?
We did, yeah. Specifically at the luau, which was like the first night we were there. So we got to try actually poi. It's like this starchy substance that they kind of mash up. It's like potato-y that they eat. Really doesn't have like a lot of flavor, but it's a very traditional like staple of Hawaiian food. You know, there was... We had
a pig roast.
A pig roast.
luau. Yeah, there was a lot of there's sweet potatoes. There's Hawaiian sweet potatoes, and they were delicious. And they're this bright purple, and it's kind of weird, like when you cut into it and you see it. But those were delicious and very pretty to look at too. So,
of course, lots of rice, chicken, beef, just like some other like more traditional, I guess, meats for Hawaii. But I mean, it was just a lot of really great food. Like I can't really pick one specifically that we enjoyed more over the other. It was just all awesome.
They had a ton of wonderful food. I don't remember the names of everything, but oh my gosh. Highly recommend doing at least one luau if you go, because especially, so the first luau that we did in Maui was actually at our hotel, and it was so we flew in Sunday, it was Monday night. So we had really just gotten a little taste of Hawaii so far, and they had everyone come out into the courtyard and they showed us how they made a bunch of stuff, food and tools included, and gave us a bunch of fun activities to do before even going to sit down and eating. And then they had, of course, the big buffet and drank plenty of Mai Tais and pina coladas. And then they had a hula show and hula dancing and some fire throwing, which was pretty cool to watch. And I feel like I learned a lot while there too. And it was really awesome at that hotel, the luau.
Awesome. I bet you would have showed all of them up with your dance moves.
You know, if they invited me on stage, I would have tried.
Wasn't that where we got to dance them, or was that the second?
We did a second luau we kind of bookend it in Oahu towards, like, I think it was our last night having dinner there. We did a luau at that hotel too. And our hotel in Oahu was definitely big resort city vibe, multiple towers, like just wild, but gorgeous. And so we did the luau there. It was on the rooftop of one of the other towers. So you didn't get to be on the beach or anything, but it was beautiful. And they had some really, really, really talented people in that show. And at one point they let a bunch of people come up and dance too. But
they even let me up there. I couldn't believe it.
We got up there real quick. But that was a good time. I will say that, so they did some fire, I don't even know what to call it. Where you spin the fire and everything. And they did that. And in Oahu, so we stayed at the Hilton Hawaiian Village hotels in Waikiki, and they were so talented. They were standing on each other, swirling it around. It was insane. And they had a net all the way around the stage so you could see through easily, but just probably as a safety precaution. And we laughed because right where we were sitting, there was a good sized hole in the net. I was like, I think this probably wouldn't do much to help us.
Luckily, Nick was sitting closest to the hole, so if any fire came through, it's on me.
But no, they were highly professional and talented people, and they didn't make any kind of close mistakes. So they were wonderful. We didn't feel that nervous. We were just joking around.
Maybe it was part of the show.
Yeah, maybe a little danger thrown in there.
They want to give you that danger vibe of like, well, they're only going to be here for 2 weeks, so we gotta we gotta make them feel at home. So Waikiki was the second week, like you mentioned.
Yes.
Waikiki was second week. So if I remember Nick telling me correctly, that was like you really felt like you were getting that experience, some of the excursions you were going to, places you were checking out. Like, so tell some of the things that while you were in that second week of Waikiki, while you were there.
In Waikiki, we first got there. Oh my gosh, the first night we got there, they had fireworks on the beach. It was beautiful, right by our hotel. So we watched those. And then we went to see the Pearl Harbor Memorial and learned a lot about that. And also we took a tour just driving around all of Honolulu, basically. It's a big city, and it's just huge. And I didn't actually process how big it was, but we drove around for a while. We saw some old cemeteries and some palaces. The
statue of King Kamehameha.
King Kamehameha was really cool.
We got to see an old palace building, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. So we got to take a very informative tour, which was really nice, and I recommend doing because we learned a lot about Honolulu and just Hawaii and in their history in general. And then we also did a Diamond Head hike. So Diamond Head is a crater close to Waikiki, and I think they called it Diamond Head because I think when you're sailing, the way that I'm not sure what material, what mineral or anything is in the crater, but I guess when the light would hit it in a certain way, it would look really shiny and bright, kind of like a diamond or like light hitting a diamond. So they called it Diamond Head. And I think that's the story. Sorry if it's wrong, but I think that's the general story of why it's called Diamond Head Crater. And so we got to, they picked us up in a little tour bus and we drove there, and then we got to hike all the way up. And it was not an easy hike. I mean, it's pretty, some areas are pretty rocky. You have to go through this really small tunnel between all the rocks at some point. It was dark. But once you get to the top, it was gorgeous. We could see so far, look at everything, beautiful oceans, and then we can even see our hotel. And it was really hot that day, so bring a lot of water.
Yeah,
but
sure. The hike's about 1.5 miles, a little more than that, but definitely not it's not a super difficult hike, but definitely a little bit. You just got to make sure you watch where you're stepping on some of the trails, but really well worth it. Beautiful view.
There were kids and some older people doing it, so it's not impossible. It's just you're going to exert some energy. It's not a casual stroll. But
there will be sweat.
There will be some sweat. But that was so much fun. And, they had like smoothies and stuff at the bottom. So I got to drink a nice pineapple smoothie out of a giant pineapple at the end. And that was fun.
I think I remember seeing some photos of that. Or was it might have been a coconut. Did you drink from a coconut too? Or was it just a pineapple?
Nope, just a pineapple. So you probably saw the pineapple.
Yeah, it was a pineapple. That's what I think. I think of the when I think of Hawaii, I think of like the coconut from the straw, or for say pineapple from the straw. I think of the luau, the fire, the like jacked, really muscular Hawaiian men that have like paint on their faces. Yeah. that's what I think of. So you got to get all that experience in. You got to get all the experiences. What would you say was the most beautiful thing both of you saw when you were there? And this can be different answers, of course. But what would you say would be the most beautiful
I am
thing?
so tied for two. And this is back in Maui. We did some awesome excursions in Maui. The first one that we did was probably my favorite day on the entire trip. And it was probably the longest day too. But we did this tour where we had to take an Uber back to the airport, but we got on a helicopter and flew so high up over the volcano there, Haleakala, again, butchering the pronunciation. But that's the volcano there. And like above the clouds, around the top of the volcano, it was gorgeous. You could see rainbows and like over the volcano, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. And then we took that helicopter ride to Hana, which is on the other side. You may have heard the famous Road to Hana. And so we kind of skipped the first half of the Road to Hana. So Road to Hana goes all the way around one side of the island. And it is a very narrow road, and it is a very curvy road. It's just a lot of this the whole way through. There's a lot of really small bridges that are one-way only bridges, so you have to wait and let other people go and you go. Some people drive a little fast. Some people don't, take it a little more carefully. But I highly recommend doing it. You can drive it yourself. I'm pretty sure we didn't. And I'm kind of glad we didn't, because it could get dangerous. We saw a lot of cars off of cliffs. Probably everyone was okay, but very shaken up. But like there's just cars everywhere that crashed and just got left. So it can be dangerous. You kind of have to pay attention when you're driving really carefully. But so we were glad that we took a tour, and someone else who drives it every day drove it for us. And he was wonderful because he said, okay, we're going to come up on this bridge and you're going to look at 3:00 and there's going to be a gorgeous waterfall. And so we got to see all of the water. We saw probably like 50 waterfalls driving through, and they were gorgeous every time. So you can drive it. I don't regret not driving it. I know one local there kind of joked, oh, you took the easy way out. You didn't drive it yourself. And I was like, yeah, but I also don't regret it.
Our tour guide also nicknamed it, he said the nickname for that road is the Divorce Highway, because there are plenty of folks who try to take that highway. And of course, it's very treacherous, terrifying, and they come back not as in love as they went out. So we got to maintain the love and see all the beautiful things.
Yes, not one of us had to drive and the other got to see everything. We both got to see everything. But
And of course, like he was stopping and showing us some other places. We got to see a beautiful waterfall and hop in on one of our stops as well, which is great.
I guess I kind of stopped in the middle, but so we took the helicopter to Hana, so we kind of skipped the first half. And then we got to have a beautiful lunch on a beach over there, and then hopped in a tour van, and then started driving the road of Hana. And then we stopped at first we stopped at a black sand beach, and I forget the name of it, but it was a beautiful black sand beach. Hot tip, bring water shoes or something you can bring to go swimming with in there, because I felt bad. So it was us and one other family in our tour group, and they didn't bring any kind of water shoes. So we stopped and we were able to swim for a while at this black sand beach. And Nick and I were in there. We had our water shoes on. We were having a great time with our GoPro, swimming around, catching some waves. And I felt bad. The family definitely wanted to be in the water, and they tried a little bit, but their feet were hurting too bad. Because black sand beaches, they're small rocks. I mean, it's going to hurt your feet. So hot tip, bring water shoes to Hawaii. So that was beautiful. It was I've never been on a black sand beach before, and that was one of the things I definitely wanted to do. And that was cool to be able to do it, even if it was just a short amount of time. But then we hopped back in the van, took a further trip down the road to Hana, and then we got to swim in a waterfall, like you said. Very cold water, but man, it was beautiful. Again, really rocky, so you have to be really careful where you're stepping.
I didn't even want to get in.
He didn't. It was so cold. Nick got into like his knees. He's like, all right, let's take a picture and leave. And I was like, no. And even the tour guide was like, you got to get in. Like, you got to do this.
It was so well worth it.
It was freezing. It was freezing. I mean, the water was like 60 degrees, I think he said. So it doesn't sound that bad, but that's really cold. And it was so much fun, though. Like, once you get to past all the rocks and you have to just kind of tread water, it's funny that we were kind of swimming around and the tour guide was just taking pictures for everyone. But we got to swim under the waterfall and then stand behind it a little bit. Mm-hmm. That was so much fun. It was definitely nice to get out and be warmed up afterwards, but that was beautiful. And then we took I think that was the last stop that we made on that one. And then took the road to Hana all the way back. So that was all one day. The helicopter ride, the lunch on the beach, the black sand beach, the waterfall, and the beautiful road to Hana, where you see so many beautiful views, waterfalls, coastlines. It was just incredible. And that was all one jam-packed day. And that was probably my favorite day of the whole trip to Hawaii. The second one, and I'm talking a lot, sorry. The second one that I'm tied with is this is probably the more beautiful thing that I saw, was we did a sunrise tour at the top of the volcano there, Haleakala. Mm-hmm. And so we got picked up at like 3 a.m. and the tour bus drove us all the way up to the top of the volcano, and you can see the sunrise or sunset over this giant crater at the top there, and you're basically above the clouds, in the clouds. It's insane. So we got there, and it's frigid up there too, because you're so high up. So you need to we had hat and gloves, pants, sweatshirts. We didn't pack like winter clothes because it was hard to pack those things, but I kind of wish we did because it was freezing up there. And we brought a blanket from our hotel to wrap ourselves in because it was freezing. But it's kind of funny. You can stay in the tour bus, but if you want to get a good view of the sunrise, you kind of have to plant your spot and stay out there a little bit. But it was beautiful seeing the sunrise up there. It was worth waking up at 3 a.m.
For sure. And there was even a gentleman there who was kind of like almost giving a sermon or a speech while the sunrise tour was happening, and talking about how important it is to preserve the wildlife and keep the integrity of Hawaii where it is, and just kind of like letting the visitors know how important this experience was. And to me, that was really powerful, because it shows like how invested that the locals are in keeping Hawaii beautiful and keeping their rich like traditions and the way of life alive. So for me, that was a really interesting piece of that sunrise tour. All cold and windiness aside, it was a really, really cool experience.
Awesome. And would you say, Nick, that's the most beautiful thing you saw as well? Or did you have a different idea of what you perceived beautiful?
Maybe the most beautiful, yeah, but I think that one of my favorite experiences while we were there, it may have just been the Waikiki Brewery. Honestly, it was. So this is a not as crazy one, but I am a beer guy, of course. But I think the nice thing about Waikiki Brewery was it was very low key. Yes. I think the food was great. It was more like traditional bar food. It was right next to our hotel. We had been told we had to check out the Waikiki Brewery, local beer. But I think it was just like another place to where like Hawaii is a very just relaxing, do whatever you feel you need to do to relax. And I think Waikiki Brewery is the perfect example of just being able to enjoy a meal, not having to think about much of anything, but just taking some time together to enjoy each other's company. So that may have been my favorite part.
Especially in Honolulu, the restaurants, I mean, this goes for probably anywhere in Hawaii, but some of the restaurants are a lot more higher end, and that's just not really our style. We're kind of like bar food kind of type of people. And then maybe a nice meal every once in a while. That's just how we like it usually. So Waikiki Brewery was like the exact of what we wanted, what we were comfortable with, just a perfect place to eat. So highly recommend. It was really close to our resort, so it was a short walking distance away, and it was delicious.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of great eats in both places.
Wow, I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm there. This is great. I'm imagining your reaction, Nick, when you went to that brewery. So like, wow.
It's kind of funny because so my mom, like this is well before, like months before we went, and we had just really decided on going. And my mom ran into someone who had a shirt that said Waikiki Brewery. And she was like, "Oh, where is that? Because my daughter's going to Honolulu and Waikiki, and they might like to go." And so it just this random stranger that said, "Oh, you should go there," and told my mom, who told us, and it's kind of crazy. But you know, if you're going, we got a lot of great suggestions from a lot of people that were really hidden gems in some areas. So ask around definitely, because it was we knew where to go to eat most nights. Like we were like, oh, we got to try this place because someone told us to go. We got to go to this place. So there's so many options. It's kind of nice to go in knowing where you want to try. But Waikiki Brewery was probably one of the best.
That was popping. Perfect. And that actually brings up next what I was going to ask you about, because when everybody travels wherever they're going to go, whether it's to another country, honeymoon, or anything to that degree, sometimes you'll have like a mental itinerary, or sometimes you'll have an idea of places you're going to go and places you're going to stay and places you might like to eat, or whatever the hot spots are, TripAdvisor, things like that. So the vibe I'm getting is you knew people who went to certain places, you asked around, in addition to getting advice and little tidbits of information from people that have already been there. What else did you do to prepare in regards to places you were going to check out? Was it possible, like when you got there, they gave you these recommendations and then you did it on the spot? Or just in general, how would you describe, both of you, how you prepared for the places that you went to and why you chose to go to those places?
So I started by asking a travel agent, just where should we start? And a travel agent was so nice, especially for airplane ride or tickets and hotels. And because especially with a hotel, like if you're not there, you don't have a good feel for what it's like and what you're looking for. And so she was very knowledgeable about what we wanted. And I would, she would say, how about this hotel? And I said, oh, well, let's do one a little less resorty at Maui, and things like this. And then she was really accommodating. Like when my mom's friend suggested the hotel in Maui, Kaanapali Beach Hotel, I told our agent, I was like, can we make this work in our budget? And she's like, sure thing, and had it all booked up and ready to go. And same with we told her then in Honolulu, we can do a little more of a resorty kind of thing. It's a city vibe, we'll do a resort. And so she had that there for us in our perfect budget and everything, and got that all taken care of. But other than that, she kind of sent us a link to a bunch of tours that we could take. That is this big website that you can just kind of pick and choose. It kind of is a nice way to see everything that the island has to offer. And so I spent a good chunk of time looking through all of these tours and reading the descriptions and seeing what we can do, and knowing that we had a list of things that we wanted to do and seeing how we can line those up and what we can, because in the end, you could stay there for a month and always find something to do. But in the end, like narrow down what we want to do, and things like the helicopter tour that also had a black sand beach and a waterfall and things like that all were great tours because you could rope things all into one. So I did a lot of browsing that site and kind of writing down which ones that we wanted to do, and then sending that back to our travel agent, and she did book them for us. So those types of things that we actually had planned ahead of time was all really through the travel agent, even though we told her what we wanted to do. She didn't really pick anything for us other than our Waikiki hotel. She picked that for us. We didn't have anything else to say about it. So other than that, I think I, talked to my parents about restaurants. We have family friends that lived down there for a while, so they had some restaurant choices. And then really just asking around people who've been there and what restaurants, because I feel like the only thing that we didn't get from our travel agent was places to eat. And so that was something that we kind of played a little by ear, but also had a list of places that people suggested close to us.
it was fun. We kind of got to see it from both sides, right? Like, of course, the travel agent and like the traditional places. So we got to do Pearl Harbor, we got to do Diamond Head, we got to do, the Sunrise Tour, we got to do Road to Hana, all those places that are more like the traditional staples of what people do. But then also like just talking to friends and family and seeing, the Waikiki Brewery was a really fun one. Got to see some really cool restaurants that people suggested, and just kind of getting like the culture around the background of Hawaii was another piece of it as well. So we got to kind of attack it from both angles.
Poppin'. So I've never used a travel agent, but I know a lot of people do sometimes. So I'm curious, how did you guys narrow down the travel agent that you chose, and what company how did you start doing that per se? What got you into the agent that you picked?
Shane did it.
Yeah, I did it. So
it was all Shane.
Hot tip, if you're a bride, they often have like bridal expos and things like that where you can go, and there's, especially in State College, they have a bunch, but I know a lot of other towns have them too. And they have just a bunch of photographers coming and anyone you can hire for a wedding. And they come and just like, try to tell people about how they do it, what they do. So show some of their work. And so I went to 2 of those with my mom while I was still engaged. And one of them, they had a travel agent there. And I was like, that's interesting. I never really thought about using a travel agent, but I also know very little about Hawaii. And even though, I know some people who have been there, like my parents were there 30 years ago, so it's very different now. And they did an all-inclusive tour, and we knew we didn't really want to do an all-inclusive. Like, we wanted to be able to pick and choose what we did and where we went. So I was like, that sounds like a good idea. And so I talked to them. It was, I think, LS Travels. I think is their name. I have to go back and look maybe. Super friendly, gave me their info. And then I just reached out to them one day, and I knew nothing about travel agents. I didn't know if you had to pay for them, if you had to do anything. The nice thing, at least about this company, is we didn't have to pay them. They get paid by like the airlines and the hotels and stuff that they recommend. So really, I highly recommend using one, especially ones that don't charge you, because it's just a nice thing for you to have someone help you who knows their stuff, and it doesn't cost you anymore. And we can give her our budget, and then she can do all the numbers and see where we can stay and when. And that was wonderful. I highly recommend using a travel agent. So the one that we specifically used just kind of fell into my lap just because she was at the bridal expo that I was at. But they did a great job, even with me emailing back, changing my mind on some things and things like that. So highly recommend a travel agent.
They worked with you. They worked with you, essentially. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So there's the important tidbit for anybody who's listening or watching. Travel agents are the way to go sometimes. And if you need a good one, you talk to Shannon Christie. So,
they were wonderful.
So that will work. And when you left Hawaii, I remember you guys had like a time getting back. So
we had a time.
Is an understatement. Yeah.
How was that?
Well, we were trying to catch our original flight out of Oahu, and it turned out that our original flight got canceled, which means we were going to miss our connecting flight that we were going to take from California back to.
And we were already on our way to the airport. We already checked out of the hotel, and then we get an email saying, "Oh, by the way, your flight's canceled because of like a plane malfunction or something like that." And I was like, all right, don't want to take that plane. We're good.
That being said, we ended up sitting in the airport for a few hours waiting for another flight that was going to be a nonstop from Hawaii to Newark, New Jersey. And so instead of doing, a halfway and break and then take another halfway, we ended up flying for that whole flight to Newark, and then took like a 40-minute flight from Newark into Dulles back to Washington.
And the first flight was like 9.5 hours.
It was.
And a red eye.
It was tough. We were lucky enough to have our iPad with us and caught up on some Hulu and some shows that we hadn't watched in a little while. So we were able to keep ourselves entertained, but definitely not the ideal way.
Yeah, it was really sad getting to the airport because we knew our flight had been canceled and we didn't know if there were any other good options. Now, luckily so that was Thursday, and we didn't have to go back to work till Monday. So we had some wiggle room, but we also just checked out of our hotel. We were kind of like, standing there with our suitcases, like, where do we go? And we got there, and the people at the airport were super helpful. She was trying to find the best possible planes for us so we didn't have to sit around. And then the best one just happened to be didn't take off for like 6 hours, and we were already at the airport. And a lot of airports won't let you check your bags that early. And that part of the airport, before you go through security, was not air conditioned, and it was so hot and steamy. And I was just like, I can't sit in here for 2 hours waiting. Ooh. And so I was getting really nervous. And she's like, nope, we'll take your bags. We'll take care of you. Don't worry. We're getting you home. So we luckily got to go through security early. They took all our bags and stuff, but we had to sit in the airport, but at least it was air conditioned for probably like 4 hours. Mm-hmm. So we went to a bar and sat and had some food for a while. Then we switched locations at one gate and watched some stuff. We just tried to like stay active and kind of walk around every little bit. So that, it could be worse. Everyone gets stranded at an airport once. But so we got there, the flight. So I can't sleep on an airplane at all, no matter how hard I try. Nick can sleep through anything. So I was already nervous about the red eyes, but at least I knew we were going to have a break in the middle where I could probably sleep at the airport because I can sleep in a chair fine. But the 9.5-hour flight I was nervous about because I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep at all. So Nick took a couple naps. A lot of people around me were taking naps the whole time, and I was just wide awake the whole night. And so when we landed in Newark, it was 6 a.m., but it felt much later for us.
We were dead tired, and we ended up having a very quiet breakfast.
Yeah, we just kind of like stumbled through,
just stumbling eggs into our
eyes
mouth.
like this.
It was not our shining moment, but we made it back in one piece. I think like I was about to say we didn't get stranded in Hawaii, but at the same time I don't think we'd consider ourselves stranded. We'd just be like, oh, okay.
We had to sit in the airport for a while.
Just be in Hawaii.
This was great.
Yeah, the flight wasn't fun, but they were so accommodating and got us out there the same day, and we really didn't land too much later than we would have. Mm-hmm. So we left Thursday in Hawaii. We got back Friday. We landed in Newark Friday morning. It's like 6:30 a.m. And then we had like a 20-minute flight then back to Dulles because our car was there. We had to go back there, and I actually fell asleep for like a whole 5 minutes on that flight, so that was nice. And
she was that tired.
I finally reached my limit and could fall asleep. But then it was nice. My aunt was nice enough to pick us up and get us back to our car. And then we had to drive to State College, which was kind of it wasn't a long drive, but it was a good couple hours, probably 3-4 hours, something like that. And my parents were watching our dogs, so we had to get back there. And so that was an interesting drive home. We took turns, and we were going to split it even, and then I fell asleep, and Nick was nice enough not to wake me up and definitely drove more than half. But he also got to sleep on the plane, so I guess maybe it was fair.
We split sleep.
sleep.
So we made it there in one piece and stayed in State College for a day just to kind of catch up on sleep.
That's awesome. So I do know some people who they can't sleep on planes. Like planes for them, it's like, can't do that.
I don't know why. I can sleep in a car fine.
At nighttime though, so you were conscious for 9 hours at night, how?
Yeah, and we left later in the day too, so we were up all day in Honolulu, and then got on a flight, and then for 9 hours, and then we landed at 6 a.m. and I was still awake, got 5 minutes of sleep. So by the time we got to our car, it was probably afternoon on Friday, and I finally was able to sleep, and I was up for over 24 hours. It was a lot, but what can you do? It was worth it.
That's awesome. Well, Nick is the sleeper, knocked out.
Yeah,
knocked out.
He was not.
You are a sleeper, Nick, because even when all the mouse were in the walls and the bugs and all that,
I'm an early sleeper, and I'm a very heavy sleeper. That's the problem. I think if there was an earthquake, I'd be the one to die in the earthquake. I can't even get up.
It's okay. Well, whatever it takes to get back home, right? Eventually you got home, so that was great. So that's awesome. This is great. I'm learning so much about Hawaii, and I hope everybody else is. So important tidbits to take away. If you know anybody that's been to Hawaii, absolutely ask them. See what their take was and where they went and things like that. Get a travel agent and talk to Shannon Christie because she knows all about it, of course.
A long list of stuff to do for you.
That's the most important thing. And before we wrap everything up, I am also curious to hear about your time in Nashville, because I remember you said that was someplace that you went. And I've only ever heard good things about Nashville from people that I've talked to. It's also a place that I kind of want to go to. And traveling isn't just again, I always say traveling is so much more than just going on a plane and going out of country. You can literally be going anywhere in the States or anywhere in your state, and you're traveling somewhere different. So how was Nashville for you? Why did you guys go there? And did you feel a different vibe culture-wise or anything in regards to the people or anything while you were there?
Yeah, so this was actually a surprise present for me for my birthday and Christmas as well.
Last year.
I didn't know where we were going until we got to the airport, and that's when I finally realized, because Shan wouldn't tell me, and I was guessing where we were going for the longest time, but they would, like, I got a bunch of, incognito gifts of like, oh, here's your ticket, pack your bags for going to a place, and I didn't know what place we were going.
He was such a trooper. I told him he had to take a day off of work, and I was like, listen, you need to trust me, but you need to take a day off of work. Right,
and in the current place that I'm in, taking a day off is kind of a big deal, So it was definitely well worth it. I mean, we ended up flying into Nashville. We got to stay at a nice hotel kind of on the outskirts of the city, and we got to explore the main strip. Was that Bourbon Street? I think it was Broadway. Right? Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
We got to explore Broadway, and there were just like a lot of very cool bars and restaurants that you could explore. And it didn't matter what place you were going into, you knew you were going to get really awesome live music. And like, it's true that Nashville is like the music capital of the world, because whether you're at a small place where somebody's just like sitting up there with a guitar or piano, or we went to Kid Rock's Honky Tonk, which was this huge, incredible, like, it was literally built as if it was like a stadium almost. This bar, it was gigantic. They had two different singers that would kind of swap in and out. They had a male singer who was more on the country side of things, and then they had a female singer. Funny enough, she was from Pittsburgh. And she was there doing more like rock stuff. And so it was cool. They'd go around and they had these buckets, and you could kind of either buckets, or they'd have their phone and you can Venmo them and you can give them donations and then request songs. Mm-hmm. And so they were doing all these different songs that people were requesting. You could literally request anything under the sun. They knew how to play it. So these musicians and these people that we got to meet were not only so personable, so welcoming, so friendly, fun. They were super talented and intelligent. I can't imagine the amount of training and practice it would take to not only be able to know all those songs, but just to like pull them from your memory and still do a phenomenal job. I don't think I heard any bad performances while we were in Nashville. So really awesome experience there.
Nashville was kind of one of those trips, other than me secretly planning like how to get there and where to stay. It was one of those trips that we didn't really plan anything to do while we were there ahead of time. We did have one thing. And one of the reasons we went to Nashville was, so my family is all from Buffalo, and they're big Sabres fans, and the Sabres were playing, what's the Nashville team?
They're playing the Nashville Predators.
The Predators.
Nashville.
So they were playing, the Sabres were in Nashville playing them that weekend. And so we went to that game. So that was really the only thing that we had scheduled plans, so we go to a hockey game one night.
Bridgestone was an awesome arena.
It's really close to like the main strip there, so it was nice walking distance. So really, again, we didn't get a rental car. We just Ubered into Nashville and then just kind of stayed there for the day. And then our hotel was like just over the river, so it was really fun. And then we again I had a long list of people, because people knew that I had a surprise trip planned, and they'd be like, where are you going? And I was like, Nashville. And so they would always like tell me a whole list of bars and things to go to. Now, I feel like everyone told me a different bar to go to. And we tried to go to, I think we went to all of them. Like, we just kind of like would go pop in for a drink and see the vibe, and then kind of go or have lunch there. We tried to get to as many as possible, because so many people were like, you have to go here. Mm-hmm. Honestly, if you go down the main strip there, Broadway, or even down some of the side streets, and just pop into a bar, you'll find a good time. Like, there were some that I think the Kid Rock one, no one had suggested it to us, but we spent the most time there probably because every time we walked by, we heard this awesome music coming out, and we're like, all right, let's go in there. It looks like a lot of fun. So I think you can just kind of walk around and find something to do. It was a lot of fun. We had a really good time. And there are some smaller bars. There's one my aunt suggested called Big Shots, I think was the name. And they have like giant shots that you can take, Jello shots that you can take too. It just comes from the name. But it was like this guy with his guitar just strumming away, and maybe like 5 of us in the bar total. And that was a lot of fun. And then my favorite probably was the one place I definitely wanted to go to was Prince's Hot Chicken. And it's this little like food truck. There's a couple, but we went to the original one. And it was kind of cold because we went in January, but it wasn't too bad. And then we went to this food truck, ordered our food, but it's right next to a bar that you can bring your food in and eat. So we went in, they had awesome music. Nick got the medium and I got the mild because I like hot food, but I'm not crazy. And the mild was plenty hot, and Nick was sitting there sweating with his medium.
So I should have probably gotten the hint from the woman who I was ordering from, because you go, yeah, I like some hot chicken. And they go, okay, like, do you mean hot or do you mean mild, medium, hot?
And then there was
I was like, okay, like, I'll take medium. And she goes, are you sure? It's very hot. And I was like, yeah, I know what hot things are like.
It's not like Buffalo
I did not
wings.
know what hot things were like. I think I may have gone through 5 glasses of water trying to finish that chicken. Delicious. It was so good. It was incredible. They give you this chicken, they lay it over toast. And so you get done with the chicken, but then you still get that hot toast, like the same sauce they have in the chicken.
It's a lot of spice.
So good. But it took me like 5 glasses of water to get through all that chicken. Probably the best, like, fried chicken I think I've ever had.
The nice thing is,
heed the warning, it is hot.
Yeah. The nice thing is, I didn't notice that, but their hot chicken isn't like a sauce, kind of like buffalo wings. It's all in the spices that they put in, like the breading and stuff. So it was so good. It wasn't super messy, but oh my God, it was worth it. Like, you just wanted to keep eating it as fast as possible, but you had to take a little break because it was hot. But it was Prince's Hot Chicken. Definitely recommend. Mm-hmm. So that was the one place that I knew I wanted to go to. So we went there, and then other than that, we just kind of hopped around bars other than the hockey game that we went to. And oh my God, all the music was so talented. Everyone was really nice there too. Everyone was a lot of fun. We went to a couple bars where, and at first I think like they must have been like these big bars, and Kid Rock's was kind of a big bar, but there's a lot of other ones where it's just like a room with a band kind of on a platform stage and just mixing in with the crowd and everything, and everyone was so talented. Like, it's crazy. We also did the Country Music Hall of Fame, or Music Hall of Fame.
We did. That was a really cool experience. We got to see some knickknacks from Elvis in there, a lot of really cool music history, not just like country music history, rock music history. There was a bit of hip hop. There was jazz history. We got to walk through and kind of see how Grammys are actually made and like produced for the Grammys, which was really, really neat. That was a whole nother piece to where like there are these hidden gems like in Nashville, and you can say the same thing in Hawaii, but like that was one thing that we found, and we decided we'd go and take a look at it. It was the amphitheater. It was a very famous amphitheater in Nashville, and I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name.
But like a lot of really awesome music history there, and they actually had an exhibit to where you could go in and kind of produce and create your own music. So you got to see it from the musician's perspective, which was really neat. Shan ended up having a really cool DJ pick. I can send you that after this, but
that was so much fun.
It looks like she's like about to drop like the hottest dubstep of 2021, and I love that picture. So I'll shoot that.
That was fun.
Right,
the whole interactive section was so much fun. I mean, definitely it was probably like kids would have a lot of fun in there, but there weren't a lot of people there at the time. So Nick and I were just going off. We were playing all our instruments.
If there are no kids there, then we're gonna do it.
Yeah, there was a whole.
It's all good. It's go out.
There was a whole like recording booth kind of set up. So I went in pretending to be the producer, and Nick went in and was singing a song, and I told him he was fired and that his song wasn't getting produced, and it was a lot of fun.
I didn't make it to the next round. I thought I had the talent, but I don't to make it in Nashville, according to this big studio exec who knows all the stuff, unlike I do. So.
Is this the photo that, spoiler, Shannon, is this the photo that when you were planning on Facebook her 25th surprise party, is that the photo that was the cover photo that I'm thinking of?
That was it.
That
was it.
That's the photo. That's the photo of the party I walked into when everybody was taking the photo, and I just
that was exactly it.
I was like, that's popping. When did Shannon become a DJ? I was like, that's
she was aspiring to it. She was aspiring to it. She finally realized her dreams. It just took a little longer than expected.
But either way, I mean, we didn't do a lot of specific things just kind of roamed around and that place sounds fun. Let's go in there. Okay, let's go here. Like, every bar was fun. All the food was amazing. I highly recommend. We were only there for a long weekend, so I'm sure we could have gotten into way more stuff. But I will say, Nick and I, this is going to upset people, but aren't the hugest country music fans. Mm-hmm. We love music and everything, and a lot of our friends and family listen to country music all the time, so we clearly listen to it. But I was first kind of nervous. I was like, I hope, because it was a surprise. I was like, we've always wanted to go, but I hope Nick likes it, because we aren't huge country music. Like, that's not our first genre that we would pick. But you know what? It was just there was a lot of rock music being played, and we can appreciate country music absolutely. And so it was just incredible to see all the talent that was there. So even if you don't like country music, it is so worth going.
Well worth the trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still worth it for sure.
Still.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. I have only ever heard good things about Nashville. Like the 4 people that now you guys are 5 and 6, they've been like, oh my gosh, Nashville's like the hidden gem of America.
It was so much fun.
Like, okay.
We had a fun time.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that was an hour and 8 minutes. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Look at us. Look at us go. Look at you. Look at you.
Who would have thought? Not me.
And we didn't even ask Leo the 10 questions I had for him. So
he's sleeping in the sunroom right now. So
soaking in the sun.
And before I wrap it up, let me give context to the wall joke that Nick, Shannon, and I have. So
Elizabethtown does it, like nobody sues Elizabethtown for having actual mice in their walls.
Because Nick and I, we were like right next to each other in our room. So like I had my room on one side, he had his room on the other, and at like random times of the day, I would just like pound on Nick's wall with like my hands, just like nonstop. And then I would message Nick. I'd be like, "Man, Nick, we need to get these mice taken care of. Like, this is an issue. Like, I'm not a fan. Too much money for this." And he was like, "Yeah, it's a problem."
There were a lot of very interesting things that happened on that floor. I think that, well, like, not to flame E-Town, but like there was kind of this culture of like people wouldn't lock their doors all the time on floors, which was never the safest thing. And I highly recommend you lock the door, because one time I remember going into my room and I was attacked, quote unquote, jokingly attacked by one of the other residents on the floor. It scared the ever-living out of me. It was horrible. And so ever since, I've been locking my door. And then even if it was locked, I'd go in and make sure. It's like there were just so many weird things that happened on that floor, man.
I think one of the first times I met Jamie might have been one of the mice moments. I feel like I was visiting and I heard that, and Nick was just like, "Oh, that's Jamie." I'm pretty sure that's when I met you, and then you came over and introduced ourselves.
And I genuinely had like a joking conversation with Cody about it. And you know Cody, he's very much like, if it's, I don't want to waste my time. So I was like, "Cody, we have a situation." We have a situation. Me and Nick's room, there's like sounds in between the walls, and we need to get that figured out. And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Tell me more." And you know how he's always like, "Tell me more." And tell me more. I was like, "Well, there's things between the wall, so we got to get it figured out." He's like, "Okay, I'll follow up with you about it." And he never followed up with me about it, of course. So I think he knew that I was just trying to get out a reaction, but it's not. There's actually not mice in the walls. It's my hands wanting to mess with Nick, and then hoping that he would knock on my door because I was bored when I was studying.
It was Mickey Mouse studying students to see what they would respond better to.
That was such a year. That was a great time. So thank you guys both so much for taking the time. Everybody that's listened, I hope you enjoyed our podcast today with Nick and Shannon talking about their time in Hawaii, their time in Nashville, and learning a little bit more about Penn State. I learned a lot today. So thank you guys both so very much. And unless there's anything else you would like to share, I think we're going to wrap everything up.
I think we're all good. Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And that will conclude our podcast. Have a great day, everybody.